I'm attorney Mitchell Garabedian, Boston, Massachusetts. With me is Ann Barrett Doyle from bishopaccountability.org and Robert Hodson from Road to Recovery, an advocacy group. I'm here today to announce, in addition to my list of perpetrators on my website, involving Catholic priests, religious nun, religious brothers, a director of a school, and a choir director, a children's choir director. The abuse took place. First of all, there are 15 individuals I'm adding to the list. Of the 15, 9 of those individuals worked within the geographic boundaries of the Archdiocese of Boston. In other words, those individuals who sexually molested the children, those 9, had to have the permission of the cardinal at the time to work within the geographic boundaries of the Archdiocese of Boston. That's pursuant to canon law. Of those 9 individuals, 5, I believe, excuse me for one second, of those nine individuals, 5 are priests, 2 are religious brothers, 1 is a choir director, and 1 is a sister. The abuse took place with regard to these individuals, with regard to all 15, from approximately all 14, 1947 to 1994. Now I'm not including Douglas Perlitz in that, who molested children in Haiti from 1998 to 2008. I'm releasing this list today as a supplement so that children will be safe, victims can heal, and other victims become empowered by this news. Victims lead a life of loneliness and unnecessary shame and guilt, and they need to feel as though they're not alone. The Archdiocese of Boston is refusing to act responsibly with regard to victims and their families. For instance, they're only listing a minimal amount of archdiocesan priests. They're not listing priests or individuals who abuse within the Archdiocese of Boston. If the point is to have children be safe, then the Archdiocese of Boston should be listing all perpetrators who perpetrated or sexually abused within their boundaries. It doesn't make sense not to do otherwise. It's careless, it's negligent, and it's callous. The Archdiocese of Boston, once again, has shown us that they will not step up to the plate to protect children. They're more concerned about their own wallets and image than they are the safety of children. Seven of these individuals on this list have never been named before anywhere. And this list is geographically comprehensive. It involves states in the United States such as Massachusetts, New Jersey, countries such as in Africa such as Ghana and Burkina Faso, and Haiti. It's become apparent that the clergy sexual abuse crisis is not going to end. For individuals in their 30s now are coming forward claiming to have been sexually abused. Who knows how many children have been sexually abused in the 1990s and in the 2000s to date. As I mentioned earlier with Douglas Perlitz, he sexually molested children after the National Catholic Conference of Bishops put their norms in place for the safety and protection of children in 2002. He molested at least 20 of my clients. And he is now serving a federal prison sentence of 19 years and 7 months in a federal prison in Texas. There is no need for children to suffer and for their families to suffer. The archdiocese should, and the church, and dioceses and archdioceses around the world should act responsibly and protect children. Of the 7 listed never before, 5 of those individuals sexually molested within the geographic boundaries of the Archdiocese of Boston. For instance, W. Emmett O'Brien was a choir director, children's choir director, and he sexually molested children while working for the Archdiocese of Boston. Father Maffei, for instance, was a Salesian priest, and he sexually molested in Ipswich, Massachusetts at a retreat house. He sexually molested 2 children. Unfortunately, the list is endless, and it's growing. 1 minute, please. On my list of 144 priests and religious brothers and nuns and individuals who work for the Catholic Church, there are a total of 79 priests who work for the Archdiocese of Boston who sexually offended. And there are a total of 114 Catholic priests, religious brothers, nuns, and individuals who worked for the Catholic Church who sexually molested within the geographic boundaries of the Archdiocese of Boston. This is the epitome of irresponsibility. Screening processes have to be put in place by independent agencies to watch this entity called the Catholic Church, who obviously either does not care about or cannot protect children from predators. And keep in mind, when you see a priest's name up there, for instance, that priests are well known to be, pedophiles are well known to be serial pedophiles. We may have a victim, may have a priest up there molesting 1 victim, but the chances are pretty good, based on my experience, that the priest has molested hundreds of children. They only stop when they've been caught, put in jail, or they've passed away. Father James J. Foley Jr. is on this list. He sexually abused my client. My client is here today who wants to remain anonymous, and he'd like to speak to you. My client is a graduate of Harvard University, and Father Foley recently became a lawyer in Massachusetts. And I've just been notified by the Archdiocese of Boston that they have found another victim credible who claims to have been sexually molested by Father Foley. I'd like my client to speak now.
So would you prefer that we don't use the name?
Yeah. So
Can you give us,
do you want to? Yeah.
when we do refer to you, how old are you or something?
Oh yeah, I'm 40.
Okay. So we can refer to you as a 40-year-old man?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
That's fine.
You can have Harvard University.
Oh yeah, you could use some biographical.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, like that. I think last year in the Globe there was an article about that included me, and just they like to say Harvard grad, 40-year-old local guy. I mean, I live in Metro West, and from Roslindale.
Okay.
So I knew Foley for about 10 years, but with the majority of that time being when he was in West Roxbury at Holy Name, and
State his full name.
so his name is, so James J. Foley Jr. is currently a lawyer with a practice in North Andover. Started out in Lowell, and practices, among other things, family law. He still gets paid 14 years after he's been removed from service. Still gets paid by the Archdiocese of Boston. Still gets his insurances covered. So, so he's well enabled that way in terms of being supported in pursuing his law practice. And as it lists on his website, from 2011, 2012, he served the Lawrence Probate Court as a family law attorney. Potentially, I haven't researched it, but guardian ad litem or other kind of supervisor, certainly involved with families and teens, children who are in troubled situations. And he's there as an authority figure, just like he was when I knew him as a priest. I mean, he's still a priest of the Archdiocese of Boston on the payroll, but he's there as an attorney now, and that's why I feel part of my motivation in speaking about my abuse and about him is his current role now, and it's I think great support for the argument that he should not be a family law attorney, that a third complaint has been come against him and been recognized by the Archdiocese. So the abuse with Foley, roughly years 1985 to 95, that he started abusing me, or I met him and he started, I can call it now, grooming me about age 10, 11. And so I basically grew up with him molesting me, and really as this, he was my confessor. He came to me in the, brought me into his room at the rectory and things like that under the guise of confession. And so he was my confessor. He was a mentor. He was, an older guy, a father-like figure. I mean, I had a dad. He was at home, and he was a good guy, but worked all the time. And so Foley stepped in there, and he was a smart guy, knew his Latin, spoke French, spoke Spanish, and knew his history really well. He helped me with school, taught me a lot, and so there were a lot of positive things, and then there was this abuse that would take place. So I put up with that for a long time, and so that over the course of years, I mean, that'd be over 100 easily instances of abuse, and anyway, so this is somebody. He's now, if he's had his birthday this year, he's 61. So working north of the city here with the right kind of role and the right kind of access, and that's something that people should be aware of, or that is one of his current employer, the Archdiocese, should do something about. I don't know of any kind of supervision or anything, being brought to him by the Archdiocese. He's just up there with their financial support.
How did you find out he was a lawyer?
How did I find out that he was a lawyer? Well, I did, I think just in doing some internet research to find out where he was and if he was still in the area, I found his law practice. That only started in 2011. And so, and then I called him at his at his law office. I hadn't talked to him in about 10 years, but I recognized his voice when he picked up the phone, and I just wanted to confirm, and that's all I did was confirm that it was in fact him, same guy, and he knew who I was right away. So.
How'd you feel when you found out he was a lawyer? Disgusted.
Well, I was when I found out that he was a lawyer, I was alarmed. I was really upset, and super concerned, and so it was very frustrating and shocking for me to then contact the bar and find out that, well, they sort of said, well, there's not much we can do about it. Not that they know what I'm saying is true. I mean, I'm just a guy on the phone, but he had. I requested a copy of his bar application, and I saw that he had disclosed that there was some trouble. It was his version of the events, but he said, I have an employer, or a former employer, but really an employer, and there was some trouble there, and I was accused of sexually abusing somebody, but I didn't do it. And the bar said, well, okay, that's good enough. Really frustrating to me, especially on the idea of, thinking about private employers, anybody. If you hire somebody taking this risk, knowing that they might have done something like this, and then enable them to get into a position where they can work with the type of people that they've preyed on in the past, boy, you better hope it doesn't happen on your watch. How's that going to look for the Massachusetts Bar Association? Oh yeah, we put him in. Oh, you told us about it. Now, I hadn't come forward at that point, but I was dismayed when after my case was settled and I contacted the Bar Association again, and they said, well, he didn't. Doesn't seem like he lied on his bar application. That's kind of one of the standards. But this is supposed to be somebody of character and integrity, who's trustworthy, who's put in a position of trust with people's interests, and boy, so knowing what I know, maybe you can imagine how alarming and just disgusting it is to know that someone's willing to say, yeah, let's take a risk on him. Not that he doesn't have a right to work. I mean, he's not in jail, but go get a job in with a bunch of adults. Man, why do you have to work with teens in trouble? That's part of my. Now I start to get worked up.
Can you tell us what the abuse that you say happened to you did to your life? What has it done to you?
It's something that in the last couple of years I've only really started to realize what it did. I mean, like I said, I started with this guy around age 12. So there was a certain, not normalcy. I mean, I always knew that it had to be a secret because this was really bad. But it was usual. Something that I had to put up with. And sort of around the other good things that were part of knowing him. And anyway, so it wasn't until the last couple of years or so that I really started to deal with my anxiety and my shame and the lack of confidence and self-worth that I've had. I mean, if you wanted to be sort of more material about it, Um, I say, unlike a lot of my classmates, haven't had much of a career. I haven't done much. I've been really limited by the idea that I don't really deserve to do much of anything. And I sort of credit the way I feel about these things to a constant reinforcement of that by him. So, you know, this took place over a long time, and he didn't, you know, say physically force me to do something. There wasn't a kind of confrontational aspect to any of this. It was more like a very gradual brainwashing and emotional, mental kind of controlling. When I say mental, I don't mean telepathic. I mean, you know, something that where you're, you know, more intellectual, where you convince somebody to do things. So I was basically part of like a mini cult for a number of years, and the effects of that have just been very emotional and really limiting to my enjoyment of things, and making me very depressed. So, I mean, I just consider myself lucky when I hear stories of other people that I am, you know, for all things considered, still a pretty together guy. I've not had any problems with drugs or alcohol or anything really terribly bad outside of the abuse from him. What's sort of driving me now or bringing me here today is that I know that he's right back there in the same kind of position. He's put himself there, enabled by the Archdiocese financially, and there are kids at risk, especially in the area that he's operating in the Lowell, Lawrence, north of the city area, the languages that he speaks, the immigrant populations that are there, the people who need help and will trust somebody who seems like they can help and just wants to take their son out to dinner, help him, give him a mentor. That's what he did with me. Let's go out to dinner.
Based on, you know, your experience with him, do you believe that he's probably abusing children today if he's in close contact with all these troubled kids?
Oh yeah, I mean that's the urgency in the situation. I mean, I've been frustrated sort of at every turn, and the Archdiocese is moving very slowly on this. I really thought that when they settled my case, that things would move, it would hasten things somewhat. But then when I contacted the Archdiocese, they said that my case would be considered completely separately from the first accusation, the accusation that came about in 1999 that removed him from service. That this would be a completely separate issue. That's mind-blowing. I imagine this third case now will be, or claim. The third one will be, again, completely separately considered. I just assume they're waiting for him to die. Because what else could make you want to wait? It's been what, 14 years? 14 years and no movement from them. So no real judgment from them. And hence with the Bar Association they say, well, I don't know, he was accused of something.
What do you speculate could be happening today?
Well, based on my experience, so I know from his website, if what he claims is true, that he was working for the probate court. So he's involving himself with families as an attorney for people who need one, who aren't otherwise hiring their own. And so again, it fits kind of the formula. You're dealing with people that are sort of middle, lower class, of those means, immigrant families, often large, looking for help in troubled situations. That's why they're involved with the law in the first place. and then he's ingratiating himself that way, and then he's well in a position to say, hey, I'm a mentor, I can help, or let me help. Are you kids having problems with drugs, or getting arrested for some minor things? Let me help set them on the right path. And that's how it starts. And then, from there he would introduce, after establishing the relationship, introduce some physical elements once he gets someone comfortable. And it may progress, like in my case, sort of beyond touching, to him performing oral sex on them. He never asked me to do anything to him. In fact, that was kind of a weird line that I had drawn in my head, that if that were to happen, then I was out of there. But it never did over all that time. So sort of that's how it goes, right? But that's how it always goes. Once you find out. Oh yeah, well that's so part of getting me to go along too was isolating me. Isolate me from my family. He can provide for me things that they can't provide. I'm good in school. He can help with that. They don't have the education that he has. They don't have the abilities that he has with language and other studies and things like that. So isolate from the family, and also isolate from, he was very jealous. He didn't want me to have any friends, or at least no friends closer than him. And so that was part of the mental aspect of controlling me, was to just be critical of everybody else, make me that way. Actually, that's sort of another effect, is making you a very negative person. It's pretty easy to isolate somebody if they're thinking negatively too about sort of everyone else. So those are some of the methods and methodology. I picture that he's up to the same things. He's grooming, and he's basically trying to have sexual experiences. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's a fairly sophisticated way that somebody like him goes about it.
Just to clarify, you said that he started grooming you at age 10, but the abuse began at age 12?
Yeah, I started with, I was in Catholic school, Holy Name School in West Roxbury, and joined the altar boys at that time. So I was in fourth grade. That's when I met him. Started being involved in the altar boy groups, outings that he would take the boys on. He was somebody that we got to know. He came to my house all the time, was super friends with my mom. Like I said, my dad worked for the phone company 7 days a week, midnight to 8. He was either asleep or at work, and didn't have anything to do with Foley. But also wasn't gonna, stop him from coming around either. It's just a local priest. My mom was really devout and he would stay at the house for hours talking about all sorts of religious things, and that was the way. So you become really close to the family, and then if you say, hey, I want to take your son out to dinner, oh, that's nice, and it's somebody that you trust, so that's how that went about. But no, he didn't. It wasn't like he started abusing me, on the first or second time I ever met the guy. It was a very gradual kind of process, and even the abuse, started in a very gradual way, where he was saying, hey, your body's developing. You're going through puberty. Do you know about that? Have you talked to your parents about that? No, I haven't. Yeah, are you working out? I was playing sports at the time. Let me see your muscles. Take off your shirt. Okay, and then that time, that's the only thing that happens. But then the next time, and I saw this guy every single week. He was always around.
Were you married?
Yeah, I'm married.
Children?
Yeah, 3 kids. So
How's that working?
pretty well, actually. I mean, that's the thing. I'm not. I feel lucky. I don't know why. Some other people seem to just kill themselves right out, or can't deal with the secret or the shame of what's happened or the depression, all of that, or really ruin themselves. I've never gone, for whatever reason, that far.
What do you do for a living? Or in general, if you don't want to say specific company, what?
Yeah, I run the human resources department for a technology company in Lexington.
I mean, it's not a pretty good job. You were saying that you say you don't think your career developed like the way it should have. You said that before.
Yeah, it's been limited. I mean, it's kind of a funny. I mean, okay, so I went to college.
Maybe not good
I went to
enough
law
for
school.
Harvard,
Yeah, I do this, thing. But nothing has really come about the way that sort of I've aspired to, or say among my classmates and friends. I'm, sort of way down here, and
How's the report?
or some of the guys. My buddy from Roslindale, John Conley, running for mayor. Well, I'm pretty far from being the mayor of Boston, even if he doesn't get it. But he's not going to talk to you, but about that. But those are some of the people.
What do you, and I don't know, maybe you may want to jump in on this, what do you think that the Archdiocese and the bar, was it the Massachusetts Bar Association?
Yeah.
Have responsibility to do about Mr. Foley?
Well, my thought on that would be that he should not be licensed to practice law in the Commonwealth. Or if he was, I would think at least. Okay, I mean, so this is speaking just from the perspective of somebody who does the hiring and firing for a company. If somebody said, well, so my last employer, I was accused of stealing money, but I didn't do it. But I would like a job in your accounting department. Would you take that risk and hire the guy? I mean, is there no one else? Are there no lawyers in Massachusetts that we need him? And you say, well, look, the guy should work. I mean, he was accused, but he says he didn't do it. Okay, hire him in some other department. Don't put him next to the money. So my thought was, he shouldn't have a law license, but if he were going to be granted one because it was his right and he took the tests and stuff, he should be limited to not practicing. It's right out on his website, family law.
There's a need for transparency here. The Archdiocese has to give to the Board of Bar Overseers all the documents they have on Foley. They have to reveal the truth. As usual, there's a lack of transparency with regard to the Archdiocese of Boston. They're keeping matters a secret. As I've said before, the priest would tell the child to keep the sexual abuse a secret. The supervisors would tell the reporting parent to keep the matter a secret. And canon law states sexual abuse matters, when looked into, shall be kept secret. Then there's a need for transparency.
Yeah, they're not, the Bar Association, all that, they're not really getting all of the information. Because, it's just that. There was an accusation, and we're still trying to figure it out.
Then there has to be at least a psychological evaluation of Father Foley, at the very least.
You said they're still supporting him with it, it's sort of some sort of benefits or pension benefits, the Archdiocese, is that?
He gets paid a salary. He gets a raise every year, and he gets his health and dental and car insurance paid just like he is a priest, working. I mean, when you contrast it with the private sector, I mean, if you get let go from your job, who still pays you 14 years later?
Is that a salary or is it considered a pension? I don't know. Maybe
Well,
not, maybe you don't know.
it's what it's his stipend. Okay, so that's another thing about transparency with the church. Well, it's a stipend. There's a lot of vocabulary. and they're living by a different set of rules called canon law. And so it's a stipend, but it's money that he gets in a check, and it's about $40,000 a year by now. You get a raise every year you get away from your ordination. His was 1978, and he's got a lot of tenure. But Mitchell's absolutely right. I mean, in terms of sort of what's disclosed, and then, you know, the guy that they said, well, we'll take you out of service. Well, we'll settle. Dave comes forward in 2011. Settle another.
At least
But-
interview the victims.
You know.
Mitch, you list includes Mr. Foley. You were just releasing this list. You're not bringing claims against these people, are you?
These claims have already been settled.
These are claims. okay.
These are claims that have already been settled.
And can,
Settled, did you say?
Yes,
so settled outside of court, obviously.
yes.
So when, whatever details you're comfortable telling us, your
Yeah.
case was settled, when was that? What can you tell us
So
about?
yeah, it was settled last summer, May 2012. And yeah, high five figures, and it was pretty speedy process. In talking to people at the Archdiocese about it, they said, well, your case is kind of unique, where not only do they know Foley very well, he had been with them for all those years, college, the seminary, the theology education, and then on. But they said, but I went to the seminary at St. John's in Brighton, right out of college, for one semester. So they knew me too. They had done the admissions process, applications, interviews, psychological testing, all of that. Normally, right, the accuser would be somebody just off the street that they don't necessarily know. But me, they had quite a lot of records on. They knew quite well who I was. So anyway, that made things go really fast.
And Mitch, so if all of these priests have you've made claims they've been settled,
Yeah.
why are you releasing this list today? What is the point if they've all been settled?
It's a matter of public safety. I can't tell you how many people go to my list, and I get one of two responses. One is, I'm glad you listed that pedophile. Now I've been encouraged and empowered to come forward. Another response is, I don't see my pedophile on that list, the person who abused me on that list. I want to come forward. At least 5 of those victims relating to those priests, at least 5 of the victims relating to those priests have contacted me in the past saying the primary reason I want to come forward is I want to see his name out there publicly because I feel guilty. I feel like I should have come forward when I was a child and reported it so he couldn't sexually abuse other children. And they still feel that unnecessary guilt. And I believe that's one reason this person is here today,
Yeah.
to report this.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I wish I had done it sooner. But it took a lot. It took me from at least a couple of years where I really wanted to contact somebody, tell somebody about it, and it took me that long. It took me till 2011.
This is something the Archdiocese of Boston should be doing. They should be putting this list out there, not a limited list with spin control on it. Just a list of people who sexually abused, of religious or priests or nuns who sexually abused while working for the Archdiocese of Boston or within the geographic boundaries of the Archdiocese of Boston.
Why did you come forward? Was it because of the publicity? Did you see the list, or what sort of sparked it?
Yeah, it sort of built up over time. But when I saw on the Bishop Accountability website the records after they were released by the Archdiocese, and I saw that I saw some of the details of the complaint. by the first accuser that it really hit home with me, because I said, wow, he did the same things with me. Just with me, it went a lot further. With this guy, it was one time. But it was the same, the same things about, your body changing and let me see you and these kind of things in his room at the rectory. And that really triggered it. And then I started to really look into it and think about coming forward. But how scary it is to come out, even in 2011, when things are pretty well established in terms of that this has happened and that it's fairly widespread, things like that. It took me a long time. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, because you're going to say the most disgusting, awful, terrible thing about yourself. And what if nobody believes you? What proof do you have that this happened? There's no Monica Lewinsky deal.
Ann Barrett Doyle from Bishop Accountability is here, and she has a number she'd like to hold up.
And would you mind trading places? So you're probably.
You want me to move it?
Yeah.
My name is Ann Barrett Doyle. I'm co-director of bishopaccountability.org. We're an organization that collects data and documents pertaining to the sex abuse crisis in the Catholic Church. We are based in Waltham, Massachusetts, and were founded in 2003 by Boston Catholics. 6,275. That is the number of accused child molesters admitted to by the U.S. Catholic Church. How many institutions in this country are maintaining a secret list of 6,275 accused child molesters? And yet that is what the bishops and religious superiors of the U.S. are doing. They know every single one of these names. And by the way, we believe that the number is much greater than this. These are just the allegations they deem credible or not implausible. And I have a printout today to give you, and there's a document on our website that explains where these numbers come from, but it's all their data, and they do not refute this. This crisis was founded on the church's control of information. They are keeping secrets they do not have the right to keep. And so I want to bring it home here, the secrecy of two Boston bishops. Cardinal O'Malley, here in Boston, at least he has released a list of accused clergy. Only around 25 other U.S. bishops have done the same. But the problem with Archbishop O'Malley's list is that he omitted all religious order clerics from that list. That is the big glaring problem. So that
The problem is what?
he omitted the names of all clerics who belong to religious orders.
For
He-
non-Catholics, what does that mean?
Yeah, so that means every Jesuit, every Franciscan who abused a child in this archdiocese, every Dominican are left off this list. 1/3 of Boston priests were religious order clerics. They are Jesuits or Franciscans or Dominicans or Capuchins. Archbishop O'Malley himself is a religious order cleric. He is a Capuchin friar,
As a religious order as opposed to,
diocesan, archdiocesan. So the only priests included on the list that still exists on Archbishop O'Malley's website are archdiocesan priests. And just to give you perspective, of those other bishops who've released lists of accused clerics, more than half of them have included the names of the Jesuits and the Franciscans and the Capuchins because they recognize that by canon law, the bishop is responsible for giving each and every one of those clerics permission to operate in the diocese. Three of the names that Mitchell Garabedian is revealing today are of religious order clerics, and the archdiocese, their Father Joseph Maffei, the Salesian who offended in Ipswich, Brother Paul White, a Capuchin friar who abused a child in Milton, and Father Alan Caparella, who I believe abused a child in East Boston.
St. Mary's in the North End. Oh, no, it's not, excuse me, St. Leonard's
Leonard's.
Port of Maurice Parish in the North End here in Boston.
And just as it is so important, you just heard the most poignant account from this survivor of what it takes for a survivor to come forward. When they see a bishop putting his perpetrator's name on a public list, it greatly assists survivors in coming forward and talking about their abuse and beginning the healing process. We have asked Cardinal O'Malley repeatedly to release a list of accused religious order clerics. There are more than 70 of them documented in court files, and he has refused to do so. And then the other bishop I want to mention is Bishop Coleman of Fall River. There is a Fall River priest on Mitchell Garabedian's list that he's releasing today, and Father Raymond McCarthy.
Number 7.
He's number 7. And the Fall River Diocese, it's to their disgrace that they have not yet released a list of accused priests at all. In fact, in 2002, the district attorney in Bristol County did something quite extraordinary, which is that, back then Sean O'Malley was the bishop of Fall River. He went ahead and released his own list of credibly accused priests in the Fall River Diocese. The district attorney did, Paul Walsh, because he was so frustrated that Bishop O'Malley and the Fall River Diocese were keeping secret the names of these dangerous predators. They continue to do so, and it should not be the burden of survivors like the incredibly brave man you heard today, and of plaintiff attorneys to disclose these names. The Catholic Church knows all 6,200 names, and they would be serving the healing of survivors and keeping children safe if they would release these names.
By the way, number 15, Brother Paul White, is of the same group that Cardinal O'Malley is, Capuchin. Same group.
What group is that, you said?
Capuchin Friars Minor.
Is Capuchin part of, I thought O'Malley was Franciscan.
He's a Franciscan Capuchin.
Okay.
So
That's very,
So
it's
he's a subset.
called CAPUCHIN, and the initials are OFM.
Cap, period. OFM
number
cap,
15,
period.
Paul White. Bob, would you like to say a
Yeah.
few words?
I'm going to try and put some of this into context. And first of all, before he leaves, I want to apologize to the victim who's here today. Because in 1981, when I was teaching at Catholic Memorial High School in West Roxbury, and Monsignor Fred Ryan was on my radar as being a pedophile, I went to the headmaster and told him, and I didn't scream loudly enough. Well, those kids were this victim. He didn't attend our school, but he was from the very same parish where kids were leaving our high school in the afternoon and going to work in Holy Name Rectory, and St. Teresa's Rectory, and St. John's Rectory, where W. Emmett O'Brien was abusing kids in the choir. And Fred Ryan was also stationed at Most Precious Blood in Hyde Park, where kids that I taught, many of the kids I taught, came from. And kids from Sacred Heart and Roslindale. And so if you draw a circle around the West Roxbury, Roslindale, Jamaica Plain, Hyde Park, Dedham community, if I had screamed more loudly in 81, maybe this young man wouldn't have been abused by James Foley, who was at Holy Name Parish in West Roxbury. And John Cotter was abusing kids at St. Teresa's, and Robert Ward was abusing kids at St. Teresa's, and Fred Ryan was abusing kids at Catholic Memorial High School, and go on and on and on. And by the way, around the same time, I wonder if somebody at St. John's Prep in Danvers had screamed about Brother Ricardo. Could we have spared that kid? And so I'm here today to say to you that the Archdiocese of Boston needs to go to these neighborhoods and these parishes and say, we know there had to have been dozens, maybe hundreds more. I can't tell you the number of kids that I perceive to have been abused by Monsignor Fred Ryan. And if you noticed, his picture was in the paper recently with Whitey Bulger. Well, some of the victims of Father Ryan started to call me because they were re-traumatized by seeing him once again in the public eye. So, to the survivor, I apologize. If those of us who suspected had known, more specifically, I guess we would have screamed more loudly. But now's the time. 2013 is here now. And now the Archdiocese of Boston and Cardinal O'Malley can scream loudly and begin to say, this has got to end. And the people that I work with, the victims of Brother Stephen Baker in Ohio and Michigan and Pennsylvania, and the victim of Father Victor Phelan from Ghana, who couldn't speak out because in Ghana, homosexuality is illegal. And so this poor young man, who was not homosexual, but was in what is perceived to be a homosexual relationship with a priest, couldn't speak because he was afraid he would be jailed. So these are the kinds of issues we're dealing with as we work with survivors and we try to help people to come forward. And while I was stationed at Catholic Memorial, one of the victims of number 10, where I went to high school in Newark, New Jersey, he was being abused in a homeless shelter by Father John Nickus. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think what I'm trying to do is connect all the dots here. We're all connected in one way or another, and all these abuse cases are connected. And they basically emanate from the same kind of secrecy and deception and cover-up.